Welcome to the U.S. Department of Transportation's Combating Human Trafficking in the Transportation Sector Awareness Training. This training is designed to educate transportation employees and members of the traveling public, as they are uniquely situated to recognize and report suspected instances of the crime. This training will take approximately 20 minutes to complete. By the end of this training, you will be able to define human trafficking, recognize the indicators of human trafficking, and how to report suspected instances of human trafficking, positioning you to help stop this heinous crime. We'll start with one simple question. What is human trafficking? Human trafficking is an act or practice that involves the use of force, fraud, or coercion to obtain some type of labor or a commercial sex act. In addition, under U.S. law, anyone under the age of 18 who is engaged in commercial sex is automatically considered to be a victim of human trafficking. Every year, as many as 27.6 million children and adults are exploited through human trafficking in every part of the world, including the United States, across every state, in urban and rural areas, and in our own communities. In the United States, the National Human Trafficking Hotline received 51,073 signals of suspected instances of human trafficking in 2021. Of those signals, 10,360 involved specific human trafficking situations that included 16,710 victims. In the U.S., a study of 104 human trafficking survivors found that during their experience, they traveled by one or multiple modes, with 81% traveling by the trafficker's vehicle, 52% by bus, 47% by taxi, 38% by airplane, 30% by rail, 9% by rideshare, and 3% by cruise ship. Human trafficking is a highly profitable crime and a violation of basic human rights. The crime occurs when an individual is exploited through force, fraud, or coercion for commercial sex or forced labor, including domestic servitude. They can be exploited for anything of value, not just money, but also for drugs, housing, and promises of employment, visas, or other types of escape from socioeconomic challenges. Commercial sex trafficking may be found in the exotic dancing, illicit massage, escort services, outdoor solicitation, and pornography industries. Forced labor trafficking can occur in every industry, but housekeeping, childcare, construction, farming, and the food service industries are particularly vulnerable. Victims of human trafficking can be lured in many ways, including by false promises of a better life, employment, educational opportunities, stable and conflict-free environments, temporary housing, the provision of basic necessities, or even a seemingly loving family, relationship, marriage, or home. Potential victims that live in economically disadvantaged or dangerous situations may be particularly vulnerable to false or misleading information. Human trafficking happens everywhere, across our communities, in cities, suburbs, rural towns, and in tribal communities. The National Human Trafficking Hotline receives tips from every state across the country. Human trafficking affects entire communities. If you learn what to look for and how to report it, you may be able to make a difference. Survivors of human trafficking report being trafficked by every means of transportation. But human trafficking does not require movement at all. Human trafficking is a specific crime against a person. Don't confuse human trafficking with human smuggling. They are different crimes. Human trafficking is the illegal exploitation of a person and does not require movement. Human smuggling is the illegal movement of a person across a border, but can turn into human trafficking when the elements of force, fraud, or coercion are involved. Human trafficking is a highly profitable crime. It is the second most profitable illegal industry globally at $150 billion. The sad truth that traffickers capitalize on is that trafficking in humans costs little but has extremely high profit margins, as drugs can only be sold once, but human beings can be sold over and over again. Let's take a look at the role of victims and traffickers. We'll use purple and the letter V to illustrate human trafficking victims, and orange and the letter T to illustrate human traffickers. Victims can be of any age, race or ethnicity, sex, ability, nationality or citizenship, or socioeconomic background. They could be a relative, friend, or coworker. They may be traveling alone or as part of a larger group. Some circumstances can heighten the risk of becoming a victim of human trafficking, including poverty, limited skills or education, being dispossessed or disenfranchised, previously experiencing other forms of violence, participating in migrant and seasonal work, being controlled by the state, working in an isolated industry, previous system involvement, and limited job portability. Similarly, traffickers can be younger or older, and of any race or ethnicity, sex, ability, nationality or citizenship, or socioeconomic background. They may be a friend, coworker, relative, or even a spouse or romantic partner of the victim. Some operate as part of a larger criminal organization, while others operate individually. Victims often know their traffickers and have some type of relationship with them. The trafficker may have been a trusted person in the victim's life. The United States Department of Transportation is working to put the brakes on human trafficking by working with stakeholders across all modes of transportation. USDOT's Transportation Leaders Against Human Trafficking initiative counts hundreds of public and private stakeholders among its partners. The partnership is open to airlines and airports, urban and rural transit agencies, trucking and bus companies, ports, railways, rideshare and car rental companies, and taxi and limousine companies, transportation hubs, and any entities that intersect with the transportation sector. Together with subject matter experts, law enforcement, non-governmental organizations, and other transportation stakeholders across the country, USDOT is working to combat human trafficking across all modes of transportation. Employees across all modes of transportation and members of the traveling public are vital partners in putting the brakes on human trafficking, since traffickers use all forms of transportation to facilitate their criminal activity. Transportation employees and the traveling public interact with thousands of people every day, providing an opportunity to help identify a victim or a trafficker by recognizing and reporting suspected human trafficking activities. But you don't have to be on duty to report a tip. It's always the right thing to do. Law enforcement will determine if your tip is actionable. Human trafficking indicators in the transportation sector. So how can you recognize a suspected victim of human trafficking? What indicators of possible human trafficking activity should you watch for? While every situation is unique, this lesson will describe 4 categories of indicators regarding possible human trafficking activity that you might see in the course of your daily work or even when you're off the clock. The 4 categories to remember are when individuals show indicators of being controlled, avoidant, abused, or unaware. Not all indicators are present in every human trafficking situation, and the presence of any of the indicators is not necessarily proof of human trafficking. The first of the 4 indicator categories we will discuss is controlled, which can be broken down into 4 main indicators: controlled movement, controlled identification, controlled money, and controlled speech. As you learned in the last lesson, traffickers use force, fraud, or coercion, or a combination to control victims. One form of control is to ensure that victims do not leave the trafficker's side. But a trafficker does not always have to be present to exert their control. Some traffickers control their victims by recording their conversations or tracking their movements through their mobile phones. Another indicator is someone who is unusually submissive toward their traveling companion. Some traffickers maintain control of their victim's ID, documents, travel tickets, money, and phone access to limit the victim's ability to remain self-reliant. If you notice that a traveler lacks control of their own documents, ask yourself why. Is it for convenience and safekeeping due to age or reading ability? Or are the documents being used as a control mechanism to restrict a person's freedom? As a result of being coerced, a victim might not answer questions directly. Instead, they may defer questions to a trafficker out of fear of being punished for speaking. A trafficker might even interrupt questions, answering on behalf of the suspected victim before even having a chance to respond. Traffickers may make excuses for the victim, so their responses will not be taken seriously. The next two indicators of human trafficking are avoidant and abused. As a result of their treatment, trafficking victims may show indicators of abuse or neglect. A victim could also show indicators of paranoia, fear, and stress. Remember to watch people's behavior. A victim might seem unusually silent, intimidated, and mentally shut down. The suspected victim may also appear drugged. In addition to behavioral changes, indicators of physical abuse, like bruises, cuts, and broken bones, might be evident. Other indicators of physical abuse are malnourishment, exhaustion, fatigue, and bad hygiene. If you recognize these types of injuries and behaviors, you should also recognize the very real possibility of human trafficking activity and should report it. We'll go over reporting options later in this course. The final indicator we will be discussing is when an individual is logistically unaware of where they are going, or where they have been. For transportation employees, in the course of your regular interaction, you may notice something seems not quite right. Are the travel plans described by a passenger logical or even possible? Do they not know the contact information for the person who will be meeting them or the address of their final destination? Does the passenger have unrealistic information about anticipated employment, such as the amount of money they will be earning? Or very limited information about the specifics of the position? Is the suspected victim answering questions? If not, these may be possible indicators of human trafficking. Keep in mind that a trafficker can be anyone: a victim's friend, family member, romantic partner, employer, or a complete stranger. While it may be difficult to discern travelers' relationships with one another, it might be possible to detect a relationship that doesn't appear to be genuine, particularly between a child and a parent or guardian. However, in such cases, it is crucial to focus on behaviors rather than just differences in appearance such as skin color. You may be wondering what any of these indicators look like in various modes of transportation. In addition to suspected trafficking victims being controlled, abused, avoidant, and unaware, we will go over some indicators of human trafficking you may find in specific transportation settings. Remember, the presence of indicators is not necessarily proof of human trafficking. While reporting suspected instances of human trafficking is always the right thing to do, it is up to law enforcement to investigate suspected instances of human trafficking. They may not know the person who is traveling with them or who is picking them up. They may be traveling with few to no belongings. They may purchase in person, one-way, last-minute, or same-day tickets. They may not know the person who purchased their ticket or ride. Their answers might sound scripted or be inconsistent. They may show indicators of fatigue from working excessively long hours. They may use prepaid credit cards and gift cards to pay for things. They may indicate that their employer is withholding pay. They may acknowledge that they have a pimp or are making a quota. They may arrive in a vehicle that drops them off at a truck and picks them up 15 to 20 minutes later, or go from truck to truck. Reporting suspected human trafficking. In case of immediate danger, call 911 or contact the local authorities as soon as possible. If there is no threat of immediate danger, report the tip by following the internal reporting protocol of your agency, company, or organization. Internal reporting protocols may include guidelines for protecting yourself and the suspected victim, your organization's preferred hotline reporting number, the level of detail you should provide in reporting your tip, and your organization's point of contact to share your report with. If there is no threat of immediate danger, report your tip to the National Human Trafficking Hotline at 888-373-7888 or via text to Be Free. You can save this number in your cell phone for quick access. All reports are confidential and you may remain anonymous. The multilingual hotline operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and can connect victims and survivors of sex and labor trafficking with services and support to get help and stay safe. The hotline can also facilitate reporting tips to the appropriate authorities. When reporting suspected human trafficking activity, it's critical that you include as many details as possible. Start by including the basic information, such as the method of transportation, point of departure, and final destination. Provide as much information about the suspected victim and trafficker as you can, including their physical descriptions. If known, include other identifiers, such as their names, date of birth, passport or driver's license number, citizenship, telephone number, address, or the license plate of an involved vehicle. Then describe exactly what you saw or heard in detail. Keeping detailed notes can be helpful, such as scar on forehead, left wrist in cast, appeared disoriented with slurred speech, companion seemed to jump in to do the talking, observed in front of gate L14 between 11:45 a.m. and 12:15 p.m. When encountering suspected instances of human trafficking, do not alert the suspected victims or traffickers by confronting them or drawing unnecessary attention to yourself. Ensure the safety of the suspected victim, yourself, and others by reporting your tip as soon as possible. You might be asking yourself, what if I'm wrong? It's okay. Reporting suspected human trafficking is always the right thing to do. By itself or combined with other information, your tip might help law enforcement build a case against a trafficker and help a victim. Reporting also helps to identify potential hotspots of activity that could help law enforcement break up a trafficking ring. Remember, it is not your responsibility to determine if a tip is actionable or to directly investigate or intervene. That responsibility lies solely with law enforcement, and while their response may not be visibly apparent to you, be assured that your tip will be taken seriously. You may never know the outcome of the resulting investigation, but by reporting what you see, you just might assist someone in escaping. Now you know how to recognize some of the indicators of human trafficking and how to report suspected instances of the crime. For additional educational resources, visit the U.S. Department of Transportation's counter-trafficking website at www.transportation.gov/stophumantrafficking. The site includes training and public awareness resources, as well as a model proclamation and model comprehensive strategy, including reporting protocols for your own agency, company, or organization to adapt. Thank you for taking the U.S. Department of Transportation's Combating Human Trafficking in the Transportation Sector training. Together, we can put the brakes on human trafficking.